So this was one of the discussions we had in the Slack channel was, so what are we doing? What are we talking about? So I think one of the things that we wanted more than anything else was just to invite the audience to have an opportunity to ask questions on their mind that appeal to kind of the broader cross-browser community, so where it doesn't pertain to any specific one of us, and just to get our different thoughts on how the ecosystem or APIs might evolve. So if anyone has questions, please. Or if any of you have questions.
I needed to prepare. So the first and probably the main question is, not the main, okay, the first. Why Brave is not on W3C group yet?
Yeah, so that's actually probably a better question for my boss, Pete Snyder, who is not here right now. But he generally tends to participate in more of the standards bodies, and he does definitely participate in W3C proceedings, but yeah, I don't know if we have any specific plans to be in the extension space at the moment.
Same question to Opera.
Yeah. We used to be very active in the W3C when we still had our own browser engine. As we changed to using Chromium, we've mostly shut that down. I see there's a lot of interest again in joining that. I can't promise anything right now.
We would love to have you there.
I can assure you the same. Mozilla will feel the same.
It would be wrong if only I ask questions, right? Please.
We can just bring another chair up here for you, Andrew.
All right, so we had this chat with Arjan already, and we decided it's a nice question for the panel. What do you think would be a next big thing in the roadmap for a browser that already renders websites and does extensions and everything? So.
You want to go first, or?
Okay. As you might have seen, at Opera we're experimenting a lot with AI at the moment. Also a bit forced by the market and where things are going. But we really think there's a lot of future in there, also in how users interact with the browser.
Yeah, I would say for me at Brave, I feel there is definitely a lot of potential for AI to enhance the local first experience of using a browser. I think a lot of people are looking at all of these remotely hosted large language models and other generative AI services, and that is not a very good privacy first aspect of AI. So I think with Llama 2, for example, that's embeddable in a local client, and probably some of the newer models can get very good performance even on phones and things like that. So that will really start to enhance the possibility of having the browser be smarter and able to, for example, if filter lists break on a particular website, maybe AI would be able to assist the user in debugging it and fixing it without having to go through the whole loop of getting a filter list maintainer to look at it and debug it. And then that kind of a rule could be reported upstream and integrated with lists.
On the Firefox side, you may already be aware that we have experimented with models running on the client side. One experiment in that area was the Firefox Translations project. It started as an extension, running a model on the client side to translate the page. That is in the progress of being integrated into the browser, so it's moving from an experiment to an actual browser feature. I know that there is more work planned for helping the user to feel safer on the web in general, so more agency for the user. So that for sure is part of what we are looking into in general.
No surprise, AI is very much in in the minds of everyone, and that is something that we're looking into in Chrome in a bunch of different areas. Part of those are around how can we incorporate AI in the browser, but a lot of those questions are also around how does AI affect the open web, and how does that change websites. More than that, though, I think maybe I'm too much of a cynic. I don't think that Gen AI is going to solve every problem we have on the web or in the world. I know that there are people out there that just think, yep, we're done, ChatGPT, we solved it. I think that there's more that we can do there, and I think as we look ahead to the evolution of the browser over the next several years, it's going to be not just about how do we use AI to do things, but how do we have the browser help the user more. And we refer to the browser in specs as the user agent. But too much, I feel like we aren't an agent of the user. We're not doing things on the user's behalf. It's kind of like, yeah, you wanted to see a web page. We showed you a web page. And I think there's so much more that we can do there to make the browser powerful and act on the user's behalf and help the user through different journeys. And I think that AI is a tool in that. And I don't think it's going to be the only tool or the only answer. I think there's going to be a lot more that we can do there as well.
Maybe on the topic of generative AI not solving all the problems, I think it's also going to pose a lot of problems for browser manufacturers, very new problems.
Sustainability, so our planet that I'm kind of attached to, so.
Yeah, exactly. And also, like, there's going to be a lot of new spam sites that are just completely auto-generated from nothing and have no substantial content. But what are we going to do with those? We're going to have to figure out new techniques for.
Only there's a way that we could filter out bad content on the web.
Again. So my next question will be a bit vague. Thank you so much. But could you please use your fantasy a little bit, and each of you, could you please tell me? Let's consider that you have unlimited resources. You can do with anything with the extension platform. Which kind of extensions platform would you build in this case? What would be the difference to what we have now?
Should I start? We have infinite resources. Well, I think one thing that I would really like to invest much more is like developer experience, like provide more and more to the developers to like debug their extension, to like testing them. Like that on that area, I think we could improve a lot with more investment in the area. And yeah, MV3 making that complete, that requires still a lot of work. So that would be for sure another investment, like making that to be complete and cover all the use cases. We are not there, I think, none of the browser for MV3, and we want to get there at some point. So that would be another area.
Yeah, I feel if there are infinite resources, then the main thing opening up would be to give extension makers the possibilities that we have as browser makers, because we can do a lot of changes and everywhere, and we can decide for ourselves whether they're good things or not, and whether we want to have them or not. So with infinite resources, I would love to build a lot of building blocks that extension makers can use to do the same kind of things that browser makers themselves can do. Unfortunately, not very possible without infinite resources.
Maybe this is a little too infinite, but I would like to see an extension platform that's accessible to like everyone, not even just developers. Because I think really the way everyone uses the internet is a little bit different, and you can't generalize that to any particular individual. And just people's workflows that depend on the internet, and what sites that they use, what particular parts of each site they use, what do they interact with in a like kind of routine way. I think browsers could play a part in like making all of that more useful, more streamlined, more automated. But you can do some of that with extensions, but you have to be very technical and put in a lot of time and investment into that. So maybe with AI, there will be easier ways to create extensions from just a sentence or a few paragraphs of description, or maybe even just by a gradual observation of user history on the device. So maybe that's a little too far-fetched, but I can dream.
You precisely took mine. So either that or retire on a beach with infinite resources. And I think that there's so many opportunities for users to make the web their own and curate their own web experience. And assuming that Kai keeps kicking ass in court, which I hope he does, that's something that is possible and we can do with the browser. And I think just bringing that to everyone and being able to bridge that gap between the technical capability of what is possible and where the average user is, it has huge potential. And I think that we're making slow strides towards that in a couple of different ways. And I think that there's avenues that we can take to get there, including some of the changes with the APIs that we're making now. But I think that it's a long road ahead.
Hi. Since we're at the Ad Filtering Dev Summit, I was wondering, as new privacy methodologies are integrated into browsers, like ones from the Privacy Sandbox, how do you guys envision the role of ad blockers, for example, will change within 5 to 10 years? Will we still need ad blockers?
I think we totally would. At least the way the world currently works, I think there's always going to be some kind of imbalance between the incentives of website owners, publishers, and users who are using those sites. And that doesn't necessarily need to be in a malicious sense. That can just be the website owner thinks that this particular way the site is laid out looks good and is functional, and one user may prefer it to look differently. And I think that's always going to be somewhere that ad blocking in some sense is a useful technology, and just being to manipulate the layout of websites and that sort of thing. And I think especially the biggest aspect of ad blocking that is important is being able to share lists and have them be loadable in multiple different contexts. So the best way we have to do that at the moment is filter lists, and I think those are here to stay as well.
And here you and I talked about this a little bit yesterday, but I think there's two important pieces that need to be considered with that. One is whether those initiatives are going to be enough, and the other is whether the only reason people block ads is for privacy reasons. So with the first, I think we've seen a lot of good evidence today and yesterday that those initiatives are a great place to start and will have an impact on the ecosystem, but aren't going to be a silver bullet. They're not going to solve the problem overnight. And so we're blocking third-party cookies, yes! And the end result is everything is in first-party cookies, and that's not exactly the outcome that we wanted. And so I think that there's still going to be that aspect where even if we have great success with those APIs, there's still going to be potential privacy issues around there. But the other part is that we don't just block ads because they're privacy invasive. They are. But there's a lot of other reasons to block ads. They might be too intrusive, too disruptive. They might break the accessibility of a site. A lot of the time, they are part of the least accessible things on that site. And so if you need to use the browser in a certain way, they can break that. And then as well, there's so many other aspects that we've heard about in the last couple of years at the summit, which I've always found incredibly just fascinating. That last year there was a lot of emphasis on how ad filtering can help protect against fake news and how that's important in the political climate that we're in. And this year we heard a lot about the sustainability aspects of being able to reduce the number of ads on the web and the bids that go through and the computational power there. And so I think that while those privacy initiatives are really important and are a great stride, I don't think that they're even focused at addressing all of the reasons that we have ad filtering on the web today.
I also agree. I mean, in this couple of days of conference, there was a lot of proof that the ad blocking and anti-ad blocking is a cat-mouse game, and that's not gonna end anytime soon. From my perspective, there was multiple proof that when you find a way to block something, they will find a way to do something else.
Web standards are the slowest cat I know.
And the extension, the way I see the reason why I entered the field is that the extension are kind of helping the browser to innovate. Like, there are so many things that has been integrated in the browser that were extension, and then that domain didn't die. Like an example that I can make that is not ad blocker, just to provide variety of this proof, is like the DevTools. Like initially, the DevTools were an extension, like Firebug get that started, right? And that made the proof that we wanted that for everyone in every browser, and we created DevTools. But still, there are DevTools extension. Why there are DevTools extension? Because the DevTools integrated in the browser cannot fit every use case. And for the ad blockers, I think it's going to be the same. We introduced an enhanced tracking protection in Firefox. That didn't kill the ad blocker. It doesn't go as far as an ad blocker does, and it does not move at the same speed. Like, because we are in a browser, and so we cannot change that with the same speed and focus that the ad blocker community has. So there is a lot of research. You provide that proof to me in these 2 days. Like, there is really a research in that area that is going to be informing new techniques. And so there will be ad blockers that covers things that maybe the browser doesn't cover yet. And that will continue, I think, for a long time. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And I think most has already been said, but I wanted to emphasize that Privacy Sandbox might resolve some privacy issues for some people, but not for all people. And as we well know, ad blockers are used for many different purposes as well. So as long as the user demand is there, the ad blockers will be there. And definitely 5 years from now, they'll still be there. And going very strong, I think.
Hi. In privacy aspect, I think the PWAs are pretty important because we can use web extensions on it. Does Firefox Desktop plan to support it, or?
Sorry?
Does Firefox Desktop plan to support PWA in later or future?
I don't.
Does Firefox plan to support progressive web apps?
Oh, on desktop. Well, I cannot tell you in detail what the plan is there. I know that we had that feature for a while, but as far as I remember, it was not that much used on desktop. And so on desktop, I think there has been removed, but on mobile, it's still there. Like when you pin an app in the desktop of the Android phone, that enters PVA mode, like so. It fits better at the moment in the mobile domain than on desktop. At least this was what I remember being told. But well, my team is very far from the PVA, so I cannot give you like the fresh opinion about that feature on desktop.
Thank you.
Just to clarify the last point. So ad blockers are great. Obviously, we're blocking ads, but we've actually expanded beyond a lot of just ad blocking. So blocking social elements, newsletters, overlays, cookie consents. So ad blocking is great because it obviously blocks ads, but we can do so much more now than we did, say, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, because we've got better tools. We've got scriptlets. We've got more advanced CSS that we can now inject. So I guess just saying that, yeah, ad blocking is more than just ad blocking. We can do a lot more with the tools we have now. So.
And there's a bigger community around it too.
Can I just ask what's the state of support for GPC, or Global Privacy Control?
Yes, so Brave supports it. It's on by default. You can turn it off in the flags if you want, but we support both the header and the JavaScript API.
Cool. To everybody.
I don't know the details of this, sorry.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I have to reply the same thing. Like, I'm not aware, so I wouldn't comment on it.
Same answer, yeah.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Yeah, for those who aren't familiar, GPC is Global Privacy Control, which is like it's kind of like Do Not Track, but it has legal status in California and a couple other places. So we have seen a few websites which are actually actively respecting that choice, and it's awesome to see.
I have a question for Brave. You have a ransom ecosystem for Web3. It's a Brave Awards, it's a Brave Wallet. And do you have a plan to integrate the anti-scam, anti-phishing model for DEX application?
For Web3 specifically?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have a few features to help people who are using Web3. I'm not as familiar with those, but like for example, when you're about to do a transaction, it'll display extended details that are parsed from the body, basically. And I believe we are looking into. There are a couple of like lists that are starting to be maintained for known scam contracts and things like that. I think we're looking into those as well.
Is this list of scam contracts is public?
Yeah, so again, I'm not too familiar with them. I believe maybe MetaMask supports, they host one on GitHub, or Phantom Wallet, I think, also has one. But yeah, again, that's not my area of expertise.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask what your thoughts on the role of mobile extensions will be over the next few years.
Well, we have a mobile extension for a while now, and well, the ad blocker is a very pretty much installed extension. Like, it's basically the most common one is ad blocking. I kind of remember in the stats that like a video downloader was another one that is pretty common. I think it mainly is like the interaction with the phone is so different from desktop, and well, the extension can help there, like to make the interaction with the website simpler, or like more smooth, or to be exactly what the user wants in that moment. So I think there is much that the extension can do. And maybe in the future, even with some more APIs surfaced on mobile, like we have a reduced set there, or mobile specific that we don't have at the moment. So I think there is a lot of space in mobile. Also, the users are using mobile a lot to navigate the web, so I think it makes sense for extension to help there.
I would like to hear Devlin's take on this, because Andre, I remember, was speculating that MV3 was moving towards mobile extensions.
Yeah, so mobile extensions are obviously something that's come up a lot in the past. And historically, there's been a couple of different reasons that we haven't been able to have extensions on mobile. One of those is just the technical aspect of it, where Android and mobile devices in general are a much more resource-constrained environment. And so, especially as we move towards other aspects of security with site isolation and no extensions ever sharing the same process and every origin being isolated, there's a lot of tension around that resource consideration and how we would even bring a platform that's still fast to a mobile operating system. One of the other concerns there is around the usability, where the mobile interface is so dramatically different and much lighter weight. But also we want to make sure that users are aware of the extensions that they have installed, that they're able to interact with them, and so that there's a lot of those user research and interaction challenges associated with it as well. Even if we get past those, there's questions of distribution. On Android, that's maybe a solvable problem. We don't have too many people from Apple here, so I can't tell them how they would feel, but I postulate that they don't like the idea of other stores on their platform. There's a lot of those hurdles that we would have to be able to get over. As a user and as a developer, I want them. I would be keen on them. Unfortunately, it's not just me that has to be persuaded. So it's always something that we are looking at and kind of keeping our finger on the pulse of and seeing. Are the constraints that were previously there, how valid are they? Are they still challenges? Are those surmountable challenges? Are there other things that we need to take into consideration? And is it something that we can potentially pursue?
I'm saying that mobile's not my area. I work in desktop, so I can't really comment on what they're planning in the mobile team, but I can probably say that we will wait for Google's lead on this.
I would just like to follow up on this and remind that there are already 3 Chromium-based browsers who added web extension support. It's Kiwi, Samsung, and Yandex. Yeah, so it's doable. Well, and the question is probably not to Devlin, because we heard his opinion on this, but to Anton. Why would Brave not add extension support to mobile?
Yeah, so we have actually looked at Kiwi browser specifically, and I guess there's the question of why don't we just take Kiwi's patches and apply them directly into Brave?
Pretty much.
And yeah, I guess part of the problem is that Kiwi has historically been a little bit out of date compared to upstream Chromium, and that is a big problem for us. We were looking into JPEG XL support as well, bringing that back, and the JPEG XL team did commit to like providing patches, but those patches were also not quite up to date, and we basically try to stay right up to date with the latest Chromium release and have our own version of it within a day of like 24 hours of the upstream release. And we have a team that's working very hard on that all the time. So that's kind of the main blocker there. I think, I mean, if we had infinite resources, that's probably something we would want to do as well, but it's, yeah, we are a much smaller company, so that's hard to prioritize.
I guess I have to ask a question. Yeah, like a hit with it. Oh, okay. So just a little story, maybe a bit. So like 15 years ago, I was one of those who created. It was a Meta, maybe like a browser called Crazilla. It died, but it was. I think there were some features that have never been realized in any browsers. I haven't seen them. Those would be, for example, like a user when they would create their profile, they would indicate an interest, and that would dramatically, for example, change the appearance of the browser for them. So they would have the background, the theme, and then they will have specified searches, and there would be a meta search that would use like 5 searches available. So are you planning anything about that? And that maybe could include some, I don't know, even section for maybe specialized ads that would support that area. So I ask it only because it hit me. I didn't really want to ask. So if you have like any thoughts about that one, and I'm just, if not.
Yeah, I can say, for example, Brave has a bunch of different filter lists that we basically preload as options in a default list in the settings. So if a user wanted to enable, for example, fanboys annoyances list, which blocks a lot of random pop-ups and chatbots and social elements and things like that, that's totally something you can do, and that's one of the many ways you can customize your browser experience. There's even a couple, like you have an anti-font list, for example, if you are concerned about loading fonts from remote sources, and maybe you don't want to load as much bandwidth if you're concerned about the environment or something like that. So there are options there. I think part of the challenge with preloading these is that there is a trade-off to be made in terms of privacy. If you customize your user agent too much, it starts to look very unique compared to others. And so there's a bit of a trade-off there in terms of how much can you afford to kind of push on users by default. We try to err on the side of caution there.
Yeah, I'll say for me, agreed with that, and it's a constant. Actually, it's a constant discussion, this trade-off. So it comes with everything that you try to do in the browser. But for sure, there'll be more personalization. I think it's the direction we're moving towards.
If I understood the question correctly, like the default profile in Firefox tends to be like as clean as possible, like matching like the generic user as much as possible, and being like don't provide anything that would not be like a user choice, and then leave the user to choose customizing the theme or installing extension. There is some work in the onboarding. When you onboard a new profile, we tend to provide some suggestion to the user so that they may not be aware about themes, and so we tell them you can customize how the browser looks, or do you want to import extensions that you add in another browser, like so that we can match the same kind of extension that you add in Chrome, like we can install the related one, just a set that we trust, obviously, it's not random extensions. But it's being experimented so that during the onboarding, give to the user more information about how they can customize the browser. Well, in addition to that, you can use multiple profiles, so you can have different way of using the browser. And we also provide the container feature that is not a customization feature. The containers are a feature to isolate things without part of your life, like it's personal, banking, shopping, and is not as different. Like you don't need to reconfigure your browser. It's not as separate as a profile. You still have the same profile, but like the cookies and storage and other data is isolated in that domain, so that you can like separate your login for the bank from your personal navigation. So that's another feature that we provide. But yeah, we try to tend to leave the browser as a vanilla version, like, and then give you information about how to customize.
Yeah, on the Chrome side, it's pretty similar to what everyone else has mentioned. We definitely want to provide the user the ability to customize a browser and have everyone's browser feel uniquely theirs, but we also want to balance that out with, as Anton mentioned, the privacy concerns associated with that, as well as just trying to keep the browser clean and making sure that if you download Chrome for the first time and you're like, I just want to go to the website, we don't overwhelm you with all of these choices. So one of the areas that we're looking at is how do we educate users about these different features and bring up the features to them at the right time for that customization, but do it in a respectful and timely manner.
And part of the beauty of having multiple browser vendors as well is that they all have their own default settings, and basically by choosing one of those browsers, you're pulling in that set of default settings with it. So it's good to have healthy competition and
okay, thank you.
Multiple options.
Thank you.
Some of us also release multiple browsers for different audiences. And, we have a browser specifically for gamers, has different defaults, different settings, different themes even looks different. And that's just because we know that the audience likes to have these different settings.
Right, so Devlin already mentioned this problem that, hey, we're killing third-party cookies, but now we have to deal with first-party cookies. And I think Apple also did it. They killed third-party cookies, right? So now we're left with walled gardens as the only remaining way to profile your users and target ads, which isn't ideal either, right? Maybe it's more privacy preserving, but also it's just solidifying the oligopoly of the biggest players, right? So now, where do we go from here? What's the next step? How do we solve this?
I think there's a couple of different parts that we need to look at. So you mentioned walled gardens, and I assume you're thinking like Facebook or entities like that that try to have you just browse the web through them. I think for that, one of the things we need to do is focus on the benefits of having the web be open. And I think that's fundamental to the web and browsers, and I think that all of us as browser vendors know that and are very, very passionate about that. And I think that it's an opportunity for us to differentiate and say, no, you should browse the web with a browser because that's the best way to experience it. And, you have your choice of browser, but essentially Facebook is offering theirs. And I think that is just an opportunity for us to differentiate there. I think even with that, we're still going to have a couple of other issues where developers just choose to, one of the things we saw in a couple of talks, choose to embed their scripts directly in the main world. That's part of their origin. And that, I think, is the way to address that as an ecosystem is to look at why they're doing that and how to enable that in a good way that we're all supportive of. And so I think that we've seen a lot of talks about not so much looking at how do you take away a capability, but how do you enable that capability in a way that is privacy respecting and sustainable and performant and secure. And I think continuing to address those causes and not saying we want to get rid of any kind of attribution for ads or the ability to have to measure the performance of ads, and instead saying how can we meet those needs, but in a way that we're all happy with. And I think it is going to be a continued evolution, and having us talk with the people who are doing that and figure out, hey, why are you including this sketchy script in your main world, and what is it that it does for you, and can we help you? And figuring out what the right path forward there is.
Yeah. I think part of what we do at Brave is also trying to kind of break into these walled gardens and make a hole in the wall, if possible. So yeah, I mean, we basically forked off of Chromium, which is I know a lot of people complain about a browser engine monoculture, but we apply all our own patches on it, and we customize it to our heart's content. And we were blocking third-party cookies since before Apple was doing it even. So yeah, I think there's a lot of potential for these things to be opened up, and at least on our side, we are still looking at scripts, even if they're first party technically. If they're providing privacy harms, we're trying to make sure that they're not going to be problematic for users, and blocking them if we have to. So
there's also a lot of room here for competition between the browsers and with ad blockers and with all these parties trying to get something that's accepted and that's good for the user. I think it's really important that we have that competition.
I can not speak for a different team, but like in Firefox is almost the same, I think. Like we look into ways to make the browser more like safer, more private by default, but it's obviously is a cat and mouse game. But it also like we need to be careful to like don't break the web. We need to be more careful about how that technique may break much more of the web for the user, and the user that may not realize that enabling that feature is what they have done that generate that breakage. I know that like enhanced tracking protection required quite some time, quite some research to determine when we were ready to like ship it to the user without having the user experience a broken web. So I still think that like the ad blockers are kind of like the community of the ad blockers are filtering, are opening the field by researching and providing information, and we can learn from that and determine what can be a standard feature that is already in the browser and what makes sense to still be like in the extension and be something that the user opt in more explicitly.
Right.
You had a final question, Christina?
Do you have a quickie?
Yeah, you're good.
Well, thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Really enlightening. Great panel. Let's hear it for them.
Thank you.